By the way, Brother Jason's speaking this morning, so let's give him a hand this morning.
All right, for those that don't know, I'm speaking because Carl is doing children's church. And he mentioned it one day, a couple of months ago. We were kind of revamping how we do children's church, and he said, I'm going to take a Sunday. And he was talking about how he wanted the kids, that age of kids, to know that he's their pastor too. And so he wanted to be out there with them. And I thought, man, that is a great idea. That is fantastic. And as long when it was Matt's turn to speak while he was out there, that was a great idea. Today, I'm not sure how great of an idea it is. And you may not be either, but we'll find out. First, this is probably a bad thing, I'm going to start off with a disclaimer. I'm going to talk about something today, and it may sound a little weird, it may sound contradictory to some of the other things we say, and that's not what I mean. What I want to say is it's not contradicting what we say all the time, it's in addition to. So I'm going to talk about hard times and what to do in hard times. And I'm not saying don't pray. That's not going to be my point today. We do pray. I pray though. If you notice, every time we're praying, I'm up here. I believe in that. And I pray for miracles. I pray for, just to take the bad thing away. And I know that he can, and I know that he does. And so I'm not going against that, but sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes the bad thing is still there. What do you do then? That's what we're going to talk about today. So again, don't go and say, Jason said, don't pray for a miracle, don't pray for it to go away, don't pray for good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm going to be real mean for just a second. If you go and say that, you're lying. I don't pull very many punches. I usually just say what I think most of the time, especially when I get up here and get nervous. It seems to be, I just run off at the mouth sometimes when I get up here and get nervous. All right, so we're going to talk about Jesus. When you talk about Jesus, Jesus is a very good example. For whatever he does, he's a good example. If he does something, we should do it too. If he didn't do something, we should not do that. Talking about anything, we're going to talk about how Jesus handled rough times. And one example, and this is not the one I'm really going to talk about, one example is Lazarus. Jesus loved Lazarus. And they came and told Jesus, we know that he already knew and all that, so we just put that aside for a minute. But they came and told Jesus that Lazarus had died. What did he do? What's the very next verse? It's John 11:35. He wept. He cried. He didn't put a fake smile on his face. Say, oh, it's going to be okay. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine. No, he cried. Something bad happened, and he cried. He let people see that was a bad thing. So that's one example, but let's move on to the cross. So, and the events leading up to the cross. We'll talk about that a little bit. And there's one particular thing I'm going to get to, but I'm going to talk about some more of it. He went to the garden and prayed. We talked about that a little bit today. And he did that a lot. The Bible tells us, I don't know the verse, I didn't look it up. But there's a verse where it says he did this a lot. He went to the garden to pray a lot. But most of them, we don't get to know what he did most of the time. But this time, we do get to know what he said. And I think that was on purpose. I think a lot of times, the things that Jesus did that are recorded, he did them because knowing these things are going to be written down. And for thousands of years, people are going to read it, and they're going to need to learn from this. So I'm going to act a certain way. He might have done something different if it wasn't going to be written down. I don't know. But he might have. But he knew that we were going to capture this, and we were going to read this, and we were going to study it. We were going to look at this example to live our lives. And so anyway, he went to the garden. He did pray for it not to happen. And so again, we do that. It's perfectly good and proper for us to pray for good things for us. Right. And for us to pray for no bad things for us. Keep the bad things away. That is a perfectly proper and good prayer for us. Jesus did it. He said, I don't want to do that. I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to do this. Let's do it some other way. But then, we know what he said after that. But not what I want, what you want. And we've got to do that too. We've got to be willing to do to go through what God needs to happen in order to be the person that he wants us to be the witness that he wants us to be. So, he prays that it wouldn't happen. We know that it does happen. I'm going to skip some of it. I'm going to get to Mark 15:23. This is kind of what inspired this in me, I guess you could say, is this verse. Mark 15:23. It says, they brought Jesus to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. They tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. So we'll get to the other wine that he did take here in a minute. But they tried to give him wine mixed with myrrh, which in that day, they didn't have hydrocodones and the pain medicine we have today. But in that day, that was pain medicine. Wine mixed with myrrh was very much like our narcotic pain medicines that we take today. If he had drank that, it would have numbed him. It would have, now, it still would have been a horrible thing, but it would have put something between him and the experience of the cross. It would have lessened it to some degree. And he had the chance to do that, and he said no. He wanted nothing between him and that experience. He wanted it all. I say wanted. He prayed for it not to happen, so obviously he didn't really want it. But he knew if this has got to happen, I'm going to do it all the way. I don't want anything between me and the experience that God has for me, even if it's bad. I want to experience it to the full. He prayed for us that we could have life abundant. And a lot of people translate that's a life to the full. And he had a life to the full, even with this. He didn't want to numb himself from that. I'm going to get lost, I'm sorry. So, anyway, he just remember that. We're going to come back to that. That's my main point, that he didn't want any separation. But I want to talk about the other one. We skip down a little bit further. He's on the cross now. Some things have happened we're not going to talk about. But then he says something, and because of he says he was thirsty. Mark 15:36 says, someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine. They fixed it on a stick, so they put this sponge on a stick, got stuff in it, held it up there to him. They offered him a drink, and he said, the guy, not Jesus, let's see if Elijah comes to take him down. So they gave him sour wine. Now, I had always thought that, I've heard people preach it like this, but that was kind of a joke, a mean joke that they were playing on these, giving him sour wine. That's not the case. Everybody drank sour wine. They drank it, it was supposedly, this is what my research has turned up, it was better if you're thirsty than water, sour wine was, but it was also very cheap because it wasn't good. So you could get it very cheaply, and it was refreshing. It would kind of refresh you if you were thirsty. So it wasn't like a joke. He said he was thirsty. They were giving him the cheap thing that people drink when they're thirsty. But now, if you think about, if you put it in that terms, when Jesus did take that, he was probably dehydrated. He's been on the cross. Why? What would you think? What reason would he do that? Really, the only reason would be to stay conscious, to stay alive. And again, he wasn't looking for a way out. He wasn't looking for a way to get this over quickly, to have lessen the pain. He didn't take the wine that would help, and really he took the wine, and he was smart enough to know what was going on. He took the wine that would prolong the experience, that would keep him alive longer, awake, conscious longer. So, I'm sure this is, I'm not sure, but this seems like, if it were me, it seems like this is the worst experience he had as a man. And he's had two chances to lessen, and he's turned them both down. He's saying, if this is what God's got for me, I'm going to experience it. I'm going to experience every part of it. And now, there's a whole other sermon that could be preached about. I say preach. I never say preach about myself. I'm teaching. But someone could preach a sermon about what that means for us, that Jesus didn't separate them, and what that does for us. But that's not what I'm talking about. So he made these two choices, and how he prayed. He didn't pray. He said, let this cup me, but if it's your will, this is what I'm going to do. And he didn't say, well, let's make it fast. but let's ease up on me a little bit, let me die really quickly, let me get it over with, none of that. It's just whatever your will, that's what I'm going to do. So, I'm going to try to explain why I think that he did this, and I'm going to do it. If you think about God and the way God created things, everything, well, I won't say everything, but most things to me seem to make sense. There's a balance in everything he created. I'm going to just say some things that represent that balance that are true. If you're talking about physics, one of the big teachings you'll learn if you take a physics class is for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's true. That's the way God. It's true because God meant for it to be true. That wasn't an accident. Every action is an equal and opposite reaction. In the Bible, and again, I didn't look this verse up either, but there's a place where God talks about to whom much is given, much is expected. And that means that if you have authority, you also have responsibility. You don't get one without the other. There's got to be a balance. And I think there's a balance in experiencing bad things too. And that balance is to learn the lesson, you have to hear the teaching. And the bad thing is the teaching, and the lesson is the good that can come from it. But if you don't listen to the teaching, if you try to skip over that part, you're not going to get the good thing that comes at the end. The Bible talks a lot about benefits from bad things. Trials bring benefits, and I'm going to give some examples here in a minute. But to get those benefits, we have to, like Jesus did, experience the lesson that's going to bring the teaching that's going to bring the lesson. Sorry about that. So let's talk about some other examples. Not just Jesus, but I want to go through a couple of other things. David is a very good example of being willing to experience and really put nothing between him and the bad stuff. I'm going to talk specifically about what he did with Bathsheba. I'm not going to go into it a lot, but David saw Bathsheba. You can't really say anything that he loved her because all he did was see her from a distance taking a bath. You can't love somebody based on that. But so he didn't love her. David wanted her, and because he was king, he took her and he had sex with her, and then she's pregnant with David's kid. To cover that up, he ends up killing her husband. She was married. He kills her husband. And then Nathan, he doesn't acknowledge it immediately, but then Nathan comes along, Nathan tells him the story, and kind of confronts him with what he's done. Here's what you did. God knows what you did, David, is basically what David says. And then David does completely acknowledge it, publicly to everyone. He doesn't hide it from anybody. He lets everybody know, here's what I did. He's praying, he's asking for forgiveness. The baby is sick, and he's letting people know that it's sick because of what I did. The baby's sick, and so far it looks like it's going to die because of what I said in prayer. You know the story. I'm not going to go into it. But anyway, so he completely, bad things come along. David completely acknowledges it, completely owns it, takes it. I did it. That's good. Sometimes we don't do something for all the bad things. But anyway, that's one example. There are other examples for David. Move on to Paul. Paul really acknowledges the things that he did. Paul, before he was Paul, was Saul, and he persecuted Christians. He did terrible things to Christians. And after he becomes Paul and he's saved, he never runs from that. He doesn't hide from it. He talks about it. He brings it up. He doesn't talk a lot about specifics, but he calls himself the chief of sinners. He talks about, how he doesn't deserve the things that God has done for him. So again, he takes it. The bad thing, again, this one is his responsibility. I did it, and he completely acknowledges and experiences and owns it, doesn't run from it, doesn't pretend like it didn't happen, doesn't do the churchy thing and say, well, that was my old man, that has nothing to do with me anymore. He acknowledges that the new man that he is, part of it is from the old man. Without those experiences, he wouldn't be the exact person that he is. Here's another disclaimer. Paul doesn't wallow in that, though. He knows he is a new man. He knows who he is now in Christ. But he does acknowledge what his old man did and how that makes him what he is now. It's part of him. It can't be not part of him. So those are all positive examples. We're talking about a negative example. You won't be surprised if you've heard me talk before. You won't be surprised when we talk about Solomon. Solomon is my favorite guy. Ecclesiastes is my favorite book. But in this case, Solomon is a bad example. So Solomon is David and Bathsheba's son, not the son that Bathsheba was pregnant with from the premarital affair, but later on. Solomon's her son. So Solomon, we said David was public about everything. So Solomon grows up knowing how his mom and dad got together. How, and that's not good. We talk about kids of divorce today and things like that. They have to deal with the things that their parents did. Solomon was that. He had this thing over him that how his dad came to be married to his mom. And I think, this is just me, that I think this colored everything Solomon thinks about women his whole life. And he never, as far as I've read a lot about Solomon, I told you he's my favorite guy, he never dealt with it. He never acknowledged that. He never said, yeah, my parent, David did this and it's messed me up and I need to work through that. I need to talk to him. He never did. And what that leads to, because he doesn't acknowledge it, this is in my opinion, Solomon having 700 wives and 300 concubines. He had a serious problem with women his whole life. He never got over it. He was the wisest man ever lived, with all that. But he never fixed that situation. That was his birth to death. He had all these women. And in my opinion, and this is pop psychology kind of, but it all comes from him knowing how his dad got his mom. It messed him up. He had a huge bad view of women because he never dealt with it. So when you don't deal with it, that's hopefully you won't have 700 wives or husbands. It's only through dealing with it do you get to the good. If you don't deal with it, you never get to the good. All right, so go back to Jesus for now. He didn't take the wine with the myrrh. He wanted to completely experience it. He did take the refreshing drink that would keep him going longer to experience it. So he didn't want any. I'm trying not to say anesthetize because I can't really say it, but he didn't anesthetize himself from it in any way. And that's our example. Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. That was his cross. We have different crosses, but I don't think he would say, take up your cross and follow me, but don't do it the way I did it. I think he would want us to do it the way he did it, which was all the way. He did it all the way. So, I guess at this point you could say, Jason talked about how we shouldn't take painkillers. That's not what I'm saying at all. Maybe you shouldn't. If you got a problem, then you probably shouldn't. But we numb ourselves in lots of different ways. It's not just, definitely drugs could be one or alcohol could be one, but there's lots of other less looked down upon ways. I've got a list here. There are more, but I'm just going to say a few things to kind of get your mind going on how you might do it. Because you probably do it. I do it. I think we all do it to some degree. One way, I think television is a big number or anesthesia. Because you can you watch television, you don't really think about what else is going on. You think about what you're watching. Or at least I do. I'm kind of a one-track thinker if I'm watching a television. If there's something bad going on with me, and I turn on a show that's even remotely interesting, I'm not thinking about that right now. I'm thinking about what I'm watching. And I think that's television is a huge way, especially men, anesthetize themselves from dealing with their problems and issues. Another one, and this one is probably both sexes equally, just keep yourself so busy that you don't have time. I think that's a big one. You know, part of it is work ethic, and work ethic is a good thing, but sometimes I think we keep busy just so we don't have to sit still for a minute and think, because it can be dangerous to us. It can hurt if we have to do that. Depending on your theology, well, here's another one that I'm pretty good at. Just completely ignore it. I'm very good at it. I can just, you know, I don't know that you can really completely ignore it, but you can act as if you're ignoring it. And depending on your theology, and this is for church people, depending on your theology, you might say, well, it's God's plan. I don't have to do anything about it, because this is, you know, everything happens exactly the way God means for it to. There's not anything that's happening that God didn't mean, so that's the way it is. The way it ends up will be God's plan. It doesn't, you know, I'm going to do whatever God's plan for me to do. I don't have any responsibility in this at all. Now, if you talk to those people, they won't say that that's what they do, but that is what they do. And, you know, in a way, it is God's plan. You know, he at least allowed it to happen, because he's in control of everything. Nothing happens that he doesn't allow. So he at least allows it, but we still have some responsibility. We still need to follow Jesus' example and react the right way. So let's talk about some of the benefits, and then we'll talk more about how to get them. But you know, I said there are benefits to trials, and I just keep saying bad things. I think that's a good way to describe it as anything, just bad things. But there are some verses that tell us that, so I don't want you to just take my word for it. 1 Peter 5:10, and the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. So, you know, we can't take that after you have suffered a little while part out of that. It's there. That's what it says. 2 Corinthians 12:9 and 10. You've all heard this one before. This is Paul talking. But he said to me is Paul, he is God, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, and now this is Paul talking again, therefore I will boast the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So Paul says he rejoiced. He gave a list there, but we just say bad things. He rejoiced when bad things came his way. James, chapter 1, James is my second favorite person, just in case you're wondering. And my second favorite book is James. James 1, verses 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish his work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So James doesn't pull any punches either. James just says what he thinks. And this is a hard one. You know, in our Wednesday night class, where the lady whose videos we're watching, she talked about this, how sometimes that verse can, you know, if it gets quoted at you, it can make you mad. You know, if you just told somebody how the terrible thing that's happened to you, and they say, consider it pure joy. You know, that's a hard thing to do. But it's there. You can't pretend that it's not. So clearly, there are benefits and there are reasons for the bad things that happen to us. And again, I'm not saying that God causes them. Probably some he does, and some he just allows, and some we cause ourselves. But all of them he uses for good, for our good, for his people good. It's all for good. But again, going back to Jesus, I think to get all the good, you have to experience all the bad. You can't just pretend that it's not happening. You can't put a happy face on everything. I thought Carl was going to preach for me this morning when he was talking about it. Perfection. Well, let me wait on that one. I'll wait and then I'll get to it. So we're thinking about Jesus. I'm trying to get this set the right way. I messed up a little bit. Jesus experienced everything completely. He wanted the bad thing, he completely experienced it. In order to get all the good. Jesus was perfect and all that stuff, but we need to follow his example. And I just want to talk a little bit about what does it mean? What does that mean? If I say, I want to experience, I want to take it, I want to experience this, whatever the bad thing is. It's hard to, I've wrote 100 things here and I've deleted most of them. It's hard to describe, and I'm not sure I can, but I'm going to say a few things, talk about just a little bit. To experience something, you've got to, I'm going to act like it's a physical thing for a second. You got to take it out, hold it, and you look at it, and you talk about it with other people, and you think about it. You look at it from all the different angles, and you think about what did I do to create this? Or if I didn't, how did this get created? And you even start thinking about, what lesson could I be meant to learn from this? What could God be wanting to grow in me through this? How can I get better from this? How can I be better at helping someone else who has this problem later? What can I do when I'm dealing with this now, so that later on, if I'm talking to somebody else who's dealing with this, that I can tell them, here's what worked for me, here's what I did. Really think, I think it all boils down to thinking about it. Being willing to acknowledge that it's there, that it's happening. I think the second biggest thing is talking about it, talking to other people, anytime I'm talking to really just us, us in this church. I don't think we have a problem with this, but a church, I think we're good at it. A church needs to be a place where it is okay to be not okay.
That's right.
And come in and say, look, dude, this is going on with me, and I need help. And for that not to be looked down upon, and that not to be gossiped about and talked about. Again, I think we're good at it. I don't think we have a problem with that. But the other side of that is you've got to be willing to do that.
That's right.
You've got to be willing to say that and be honest. When you act as if nothing's going on, and I think I've said this before, but some of you may not have ever heard me say it, but what motivates me, if you say to me, if you do this, it will help you, talking about me, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. I don't know. I'm kind of stubborn, I don't know. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, who knows. But if you say to me, if you do it this way, you're going to hurt other people, then that motivates me. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be responsible for hurting anybody, for doing anything negative to anybody. So that's why I want to go with this. If you come in here and you've got problems and you act like you don't, you act, I'm going to use the word perfect. People have different connotations for that. But if you act like everything's fine, people will believe you. Why wouldn't they? You're their brothers and sisters. Why wouldn't they believe you? If every time you talk to them and you say, I had a great day, everything's good, my finances are good, my family's good, everything's fine, they'll believe you. Then they'll see Jason, Jason has it all figured out. Everything's fine with Jason. And that leads to two thoughts for them. This is how you hurt them. It leads to two things for them. One is they will one of two. They won't do both, but they'll do one of two things. They will either say, "What is wrong with me that I'm not like him?" You know, we've got kind of the same background. We're in the same church. We've got similar jobs, but I'm not good, and he is. So something is terribly wrong with me. Or, why doesn't God care about me the way he cares about you? And both of those things can destroy a person if they think those. And if you pretend like everything's okay and it's not, that's what you're leading people to think. So just think about that. You're messing people up. When you don't acknowledge what's going on in your life, you're messing people up. And I'm going to make another disclaimer. This is Becky has read this, and she told me to make this disclaimer. If you're on the other side of that, don't use that as an excuse. That's not your excuse to stay home and not be involved in the church. If you do that, that's your fault. That's not their fault anymore. That's your fault. So that's one thing. Don't be perfect. And another thing that we don't want to do. Here's some negatives. Don't wall yourself off. As humans, we kind of think of walls as protection. And that's true. Walls will protect you. And even to some degree, walling yourself off from people will protect you. If you're not close to anybody, you're much less likely to get hurt. That is absolutely true. Nobody can deny that. But you also isolate yourself a great deal. And I tried to think of a way to explain this, and I just thought, just imagine if we here in Arkansas built a giant wall around it. Not right now, but hundreds of years ago, we built a giant wall around Arkansas and had nothing to do with anybody else. What would we have? We'd have rice and soybeans. That's it. I'm serious. We wouldn't have cell phones. Nobody in Arkansas did anything to do a cell phone. So when you isolate yourself from, you wall yourself off from bad stuff, but you're walling yourself off from good stuff too. So don't do that. That is a very negative thing. You don't want to be isolated. So I'm going to close now. I'm closing. I've thought a lot about, I've known exactly what I was going to say for quite a while. And I've thought a lot about how to close. I'm not very good at altar calls. But I do want to give you the opportunity to respond in some way, to maybe acknowledge some bad things that you've been pushing away, that you've been ignoring, that you've been pretending like they're not happening. You might need to acknowledge those. One of the ways to acknowledge them is to talk, is to tell somebody. So you might need to grab somebody and tell them what's going on. Maybe that might explain why you were so mean to them a couple of minutes ago. Who knows? But anyway, I want to give you some time to respond, but you may not know how to respond. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to be quiet for about a minute. During that minute, what I want you guys to do is pray and think about, is God wanting me to respond to worshiping if you come and start playing or whatever. So anyway, I'm going to pray. During the quiet time, just ask God and listen. We're going to be quiet so we can listen to see is there something that God needs me to do? What does he need me to pray? What does he need me to talk to somebody? Whatever, I don't know. Whatever, just listen and you'll hear what God wants you to do. God, I love you. I just thank you for everything that you do for us. I thank you for helping me to present things in the best way I could. I thank you for our people here today. I thank you for helping them to hear and helping them to listen and hear you and not me. I just ask you to speak to us now. Just let us know how we need to respond, what we need to do today, what we need to do tomorrow, what we need to do next week and on into the future. How we, if and how we need to react differently to negative situations. I just ask you to let us know, God. Just speak clearly to us and help us to understand what you would like us to do. In Jesus' name I pray. All right, so hopefully you've heard, just the worship's going to start playing. I'm going to walk away. We've got people here that will pray with you if that's what you need. We've got people that will listen to you tell them something if that's what you need. They're going to come up here and stand and be ready. Whatever, I just encourage you, whatever God led you or prompted you to do in response, do that. Don't hide from it. Be like Jesus. Take it full on, right in the face. Just do whatever God led you to do.
You know,